How's it?
How was your run this morning?
Not today. Only did not.
Oh, yes, tomorrow.
Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday.
I know.
I mean, good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Chandrika.
Steve Bronstein.
Mayor, how you
Nice to
doing?
see you.
Good. It's been a while.
Yeah. Don't come out of the trenches much.
Yes, yeah.
Hello, sir. All right.
And I'm Denise.
Awesome.
Glad to meet you.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Right there. So who called this meeting?
Denise instigated.
I instigated you follow Rob.
So we don't really have a program set up, so do you want to say a few words and then I'll read the proclamation?
Sure.
Give an introduction to everything and then I'll do this.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and this is really just to set off National Hemp History Week that we are gathering with the rest of the nation. We're just celebrating. As you all know, we passed the Industrial Hemp Bill on April 30th, this past April.
Yay.
And it's for a research project that's on Oahu right now, and we're looking to expand it. And this week is all about educating the public and on different things that we can make, because there's 25,000 different products that we can make out of industrial hemp, besides remediating our soil and helping to create just a great boosting the economy here. So one of the things that you're seeing are hempcrete, which is what we can make our houses out of, which is naturally mold, mildew, and insect resistant. And
Have you seen that before?
have you seen this? This is
It's
very
not a Rice Krispie.
Feel how light it is.
Yep.
That's hempcrete. And this is actually hemp insulation.
It's not itchy, Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, you can handle it with your hands and not have to wear gloves and stuff. So this is what we're looking to build homes out of here.
Especially in Haiku, you know, they have such a problem with mold and mildew. Great.
I'll vouch for that.
You resemble that remark.
Yeah, between Rob and Dave Ching, we're well acquainted with some of the challenges out there.
So other than that, I just
Okay.
want to say thank you to everyone that's here that has been so grateful supporting this. So thank you so much. It's great.
Thank you. And Denise, didn't the federal government also recently say it's not an intoxicant or not a narcotic?
They have separated it for the research programs that it is not marijuana. So in February of this past year, President Obama signed the Farm Bill.
What was he smoking?
What was he smoking?
He didn't come off. He
I
didn't
couldn't
inhale.
resist.
No
Denise, I have a question.
inhalation.
I have a question. Is this good for Maui?
Of course it's good for Maui. It's good for all of the Hawaiian Islands.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, we know that this is a topic that's been brought up for a number of years now, and there's been various discussions throughout the years. So this past year, the state legislature actually passed a bill allowing an experimental product to be tried with hemp. And we'll see how the experimental comes out, but at least it's a way of being able to find out scientifically whether something will work or not and what the cause and effects are going to be. There have been many discussions over the years from varying groups as to whether or not this is something that's a good product or maybe disruptive, and the experimentation will allow us to be able to verify one way or the other what really the real truth of the matter is. And it's good to be getting away from a lot of just speculative discussion and actually getting into some real scientific basis to have some kind of real discussion as to what's real and what's possible and what's not possible. You know, the discussions over the years have gone to the point of whether or not, if this were allowed nationwide, whether or not we'd be competitive with any other other community or not, because Hawaii does not have a major crop, and nor are we able to sustain a major crop because we cannot compete. We have not been able to compete on major crops with any of the big growers. The entire sugarcane operation over here is a small backyard operation in Texas. And the size of the agricultural industry that we have is dwarfed by many of the other states and countries that we compete with. So we tend to be niche market oriented. And if this were to become a broad-based universal crop where everyone could plant it, there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not we could be competitive. The same thing happened with avocados. We were looking at trying to create an avocado industry, and we were trying to do some other crops, and we found out that we start growing it over here, and they start growing it in Argentina, and they do a statewide size farm in Argentina, and we're doing acres over here. They're hundreds of square miles. It's that kind of a competition nature that we have to be able to consider if we're going to put a lot of time and energy into a specific crop, whether or not long term it's going to be viable, and whether or not it's going to be competitive if it becomes acceptable to farm this nationwide. Niche crops, Hawaii has done traditionally very, very well with niche crops. So when we're doing smaller quantities, it's actually more expensive to grow them on the mainland where we have large industrial type operations. We do very well with niche crops here. And over the years, we've proven that for such things as carnations, different kinds of flowers, we can actually produce a lot more, create a lot more value than mainland can. And we have here one of the prime examples of a farmer that's being able to work with a niche crop area, growing a lot of the sprouts. It's something that he can do because it is a niche crop. It's not being done on a large industrial scale because of the need to have fresh product. And that's the kind of market we really have to look for. So experimenting in this area will give us an idea as to whether or not we're actually opening an area that we can control, or whether or not. Well, it'll give us real statistics one way or the other. So with that, we do have a proclamation, and I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas industrial hemp is a renewable crop that has been cultivated for more than 4,000 years and was once the most widely cultivated crop in the world. And whereas industrial hemp is said to improve agricultural land by decreasing runoff and topsoil loss, it can also help clean the soil through a process called phytoremediation, in which the plant's roots absorb metals, pesticides, solvents, crude oil, and other toxins. And whereas industrial hemp is a crop with many uses, it can be used in the manufacturing of thousands of products and utilized for food, fiber, and fuel. And whereas the state of Hawaii and Hawaii Industrial Hemp Research Pilot Project will begin growing the plant in the island on July 1st, 2014, to access its commercial viability. And whereas the County of Maui supports the state's effort to conduct research on this versatile crop, now therefore I, Alan M. Arakawa, Mayor of the County of Maui, have the honor of proclaiming, and do hereby proclaim, June 2nd through 8th, 2014, as Industrial Hemp History Week. So with that, we'll declare this Industrial Hemp History Week, and hopefully the state will be able to conduct a lot of the research that's necessary, and we can clearly define what the parameters of the industry should be and what the potential of the industry should be. I can assure you, if it becomes a worldwide most cultivated crop, just because of our small size, we'll probably be outcompeted with. But as a niche crop, and for specific niche reasons, it most definitely has potential. In the biofuel area, if we're going to create specific biofuels, it might work. In areas where we're doing specific clothing type of manufacturing, it might work. But if 20 million acres of stuff is planted, then they'll probably be cheaper every place else. That's the real challenge that's going to occur with this area. So a lot of times we find that when we're creating products, if we can do it early and fast before everybody else does, we can establish markets. And at least for the temporary period, we can compete in those markets. once the rest of the world catches up with us, then we find it's very difficult. Pineapple is one of the areas where we found that, once the Philippine market and some of the Thailand markets started getting much bigger production, we can't compete. And it's very difficult to compete except for the fresh fruit market. So the canned market, again, when you start getting quantities, it's very difficult. But we'll see what happens with hemp. It should prove to be a very interesting experiment. I'm not sure where they're going to exactly do the plots yet, but that's going to be also interesting to see how and what the water requirements and what is capable without a whole lot of care. If it's something that can be produced within the structure that we have, with the natural water systems that we have, and with the soils that we have, then it might become very, very good crop. So it has a potential, but testing will bear it out. Any questions from anybody?
I think one of the nice things about the hempcrete that she had showed you is that keeps the unions working, because we can do construction, we can create construction materials here, and that's a whole world that's just beginning to open up, happening in London and England. And the most expensive thing about construction here is bringing the concrete in and bringing materials in. So if we can do it,
We're not gonna disagree on that. It has a potential,
yeah.
as does the old rubber from the tires that we have, as has a number of different types of material. It's a question of what we have available and how we utilize it. So, a lot of the old tires that we have make great concrete product and be put back into the roads. It's going to be a question of how much material is available, how well it's received, and how we incorporate that within the structures that we have locally. We were having a real problem with trying to do recycled glasscrete. And that was a product that was actually scheduled to be put into a lot of our roads. So some have it, but it hasn't been widely accepted. There are a lot of materials that we can work with. So it's not out of the question, can it be done? It's, will it become competitive enough to be able to corner a market where that niche will work? That's really what these experiments will create for us. And I tend to look at things from the larger perspective, because I get so many requests for a lot of different products, and everybody has a real good idea on a different product, but you have to look at how does it blend in with the overall needs of the community and the market.
I hope we have the problem that everybody's growing it.
Well, if everybody's growing it, we won't have a problem at all.
Right.
So, a lot of it just happens to be what is it, what's the rest of the world going to do?
Right.
Remember when we were doing, what was the beans we were trying to create over here? Macadamia nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Remember we planted this whole area in macadamia nuts. We were going to try and do a macadamia nut industry. And then I think it was Argentina that came in 1 year. They planted over 1,000 acres of macadamia nuts, and they had a rotation of about 1,000 acres a year. Just took us out of the market. Yeah.
So at what point do you consider the market and also just our own self-sustainability and reliance on eating and building what we live in here? How do you bear out those factors and what's more important?
What will occur is that the community will decide that by what they produce, what they buy, what they consume. There was a lot of discussion about places and stores that we have, like Costco. People said that it was competitive. It wasn't going to allow the local businesses to sustain itself, and a lot of the other stores did go out. And it's because everybody went to Costco. The market dictated who's going to survive and who's not. At the same time, farmers market became much more popular. So while Afuks and some of the older supermarkets went out, other opportunities arose, and the community dictates which they're going to patronize. And you're patronizing with your dollars. That's the vote that the business people need. So it's not any government agency, it's going to be the community itself that will dictate it. If people within the community decide they don't want to go to Costco, and for a week, nobody goes to Costco. Costco will probably close. And it wouldn't take much more than, a month to close Costco. But the vote is going to have to be by the community. It means that everybody would just have to say, okay, we're not going to go there. I don't see that happening historically. And there are a lot of new systems that come in, different stores, different ways of doing things, different ways of marketing. But at the end of the day, it's the people within the communities that make the decision as to what's going to survive and what's not, why they're purchasing. So when I look at 80% of all the products coming in from various outside sources, it's because 80% of the people that are doing the purchases feel that this is the most secure way for them to get their food, and this is what they accept as the common way to do things. If they didn't, they wouldn't purchase from those areas, they'd be going to the others. And the other thing that balances off is there enough product in the private sector? If the private sector can't provide enough product of one quantity and somebody has to bring it in from someplace else, then they do. I farmed for a long time, and that was our competition. We could produce all the cabbage in the state within our farm group. Almost nothing was imported. At one point, I raised about 3/4 of all the zucchini in the state, and it was hard to sell zucchini. Today, I couldn't produce. If I produced the same amount, I wouldn't be doing 1%. Because the demand has grown so much over time, the different types of commodities have grown over time, and because I can't produce the amount that would be required, then they'll get the supply from other places. But if the local economy and the local producers can actually produce the product, it's highly likely that the local purchasers will purchase. But it's a balancing act that's done economically. And no matter what anybody says, the vote is with your money. What you purchase and what you don't.
Mayor, we're going to have to wrap up because we want to take a picture.
Okay.
And you do have a next appointment pretty soon that Grace is calling for you.
One question.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment because I agree with what Courtney said about being, a sustainable product, and that we hadn't necessarily, the American public wasn't necessarily allowed to vote with our dollars when it was made illegal. So that's why we need the help of the state and county governments, because there was a point when hemp was widely grown. It was grown throughout the United States for rope. And that vote was taken away from us by our federal government when it was put on Schedule 1 and deemed a narcotic. So just to keep that in mind, that doesn't always follow that the market's allowed to determine.
Well, I should qualify markets and laws.
Right.
We create rules within our community. Some of them make sense, some of them don't. Some of them have to be evolving, and some, resist being evolution. But laws that we present today, if we were to take all the laws we have today and we look back 20 years, probably a third of those laws are different. If we look at the direction that we were setting 20 years ago, we're going to find that a lot of the directions are different. If we look at the technology that we're using today, information we're using today, we're going to find that if we look back 20 years ago, a lot of the information is different. So it's, at any given time, the best information that you have to make the best decisions, that's what you work with. There's no predicting what will happen 50 and 100 years ago to certainty. One can always guess, but it's never a certainty. And we don't know which way a lot of things are going to go. So the only thing that I know of right now that's kind of been proven true is we were born and we're going to die. Everything in between anybody in public has differed, right? The kind of choices you make for clothing, the kind of choices you make for an occupation, the kind of choices you make in what you want to purchase or what your goals are, they all differ from person to person. And a lot of the rules within our community have changed from what was once concrete to being very, very flexible over time. When I was young, somebody got a job, they were expected to work in that job their entire lifetime. Many of the plantations were like that. People got a job, they stayed there forever. Right? Today, the average youngster is changing jobs, just about as fast as they can find a new job. And the technology is certainly something that's creating different kinds of jobs, even in the same situation. You can't use 3-year-old iPhones and expect to be able to communicate with the kids of today. 5 years ago, I didn't know what the heck texting was, right? Because it didn't exist. Today, you can't go to a grade school kid and them not know what texting is. All of the technologies have evolved tremendously. And in almost every kind of occupation that we've had to be able to adjust to the different technologies. And it's the only certainty today is that there's an uncertainty in everything that we do, because the newer technologies are constantly evolving. And that's something we have to take into consideration how we do things. So I look at what is it that has the best scientific background or basis for making a decision, what has the most predominance of proof at this point, and we work from the predominance of proof. Because there is no certainty to any degree with anything other than looking at what's available. We can guesstimate at everything, but it's best guess using the best information possible.
Mary, you made a comment.
Yep. Get everybody here.
Somebody can hold up their hemp.
Rob wants somebody to hold up a bar.
Yeah. Jump in a little bit on the end, thank you.
Bin is in.
Did it a couple times, Rob.
Okay, that looked good. Everybody, hemp, hemp, hooray. Okay.
There, help yourself to samples. There's soaps and hemp seeds, and you got the bars. Have a bar.
Thanks, everybody.
What's that?
No, we're good. You did
It all comes into play. You're seeing what the entire industry
I don't think you can, actually, I don't think you can say sign for the same district. I mean, it's kind of representative of country. Jimmy, listen, do you want to just announce what we're talking about the resolution? No, he's not.
Sorry, I gotta run. Thank you. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a county resolution, well, I don't know exactly.
Yep,
thanks, boss.
Take care.
See you later.
Basically, they just resolve.
Right.
So like,
Same thing like this, but it's the council.
yeah, everyone that's here.
I will send it.
Okay.